After my baby was born early, I texted the family group chat, "We're in the NICU, please pray." My mom replied with beach photos from Hawaii. Nobody came. A month later, still sitting in the hospital cafeteria, I saw 62 missed calls and a text from my sister, "Pick up, it's bad." I answered. And then, "Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name is Audrey. I'm 38 now, but this all happened about 6 years ago. Before my son, Arthur, came into my world, my life felt incomplete. It's funny, from the outside, I had everything. A marketing career I genuinely loved in Seattle, helping small businesses find their voice. Every morning, I woke up excited about the creative challenges ahead. My husband, Richard, and I had been married for 3 years, living in this cozy 2-bedroom apartment with our rescue cat, Luna. We had our routines, our favorite weekend brunch spots, and this big, beautiful dream of starting a family. But that dream felt like it was a million miles away. For 2 long, agonizing years, we tried. We tried everything. And all we got for our efforts was heartbreak. 3 times, we saw that little pink line, and 3 times, our hopes were shattered by a miscarriage. Each loss left a deeper scar, a raw, hollow ache that seemed to consume everything. The first one, it was a shock. The second one, a cruel joke. By the third, I just felt numb. I remember sitting in the car after the doctor's appointment, just staring at the rain on the windshield, unable to even cry. Richard held my hand, his own grief a silent, heavy weight in the car with us. We clung to each other through it all. He was my rock. The doctors ran every test, prescribed every medication, monitored every hormone. They called it unexplained infertility, which felt less like a diagnosis and more like a cruel, indefinite sentence. It's a special kind of torture, to want something so badly and have no reason, no explanation for why you can't have it. One night, after our 3rd loss, Richard found me sitting in the dark in what was supposed to be the nursery. He didn't turn on the light. He just came and sat on the floor next to me. "Maybe we should take a break," he suggested gently. I started to protest, but he stopped me. Not from trying, he clarified, but from making it our entire focus. "It's eating us alive, Audrey. Let's travel. Let's go somewhere. Let's remember what made us happy before all this." He was right. We had become so consumed by the monthly cycles of hope and disappointment that we'd forgotten how to just be us. So, we planned a trip to Maine. 2 weeks of hiking through Acadia National Park, eating fresh seafood by the ocean, and simply reconnecting. We talked about everything but babies. We talked about our careers, about books we'd read, about silly childhood memories. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without the anxiety dreams, without waking up with my heart pounding. It was there, in that peaceful, healing space, that I conceived Arthur. We wouldn't know for another 3 weeks, when my period was late and I hesitantly took a test, my hands trembling as I tried desperately not to hope too much. When 2 pink lines appeared, bold and undeniable, I couldn't believe it. I just slid down to the bathroom floor, the test clutched in my hand, and sobbed. I took 3 more tests, just to be sure, before calling Richard at work. "I'm pregnant," I whispered into the phone, as if saying it too loudly might make it disappear. The silence on the other end of the line was terrifying, stretching for what felt like an eternity. Then, I heard it. A muffled sob. "I'm coming home," was all he said, and the line went dead. That night, we just held each other, a fragile, precious secret held between us. A miracle we were almost too afraid to believe in. My relationship with my extended family, well, it had always been complicated. My mother died from breast cancer when I was 15, leaving this giant void that no one could ever fill. She was my everything. After she passed, I remember going through her things and finding a small box with some jewelry and a letter. It talked about the modest inheritance she was leaving for me and how she hoped I would use it for something that brought me joy. But all I wanted was her. My father remarried 2 years later to a woman named Patricia. She was kind, I suppose, but distant. We developed a cordial, polite relationship, but we never had that mother-daughter bond one craved. Then there were my mother's sisters, my aunts. Aunt Dolores, my mom's younger sister, she really tried. She'd invite me for sleepovers and teach me my mother's recipes, trying to keep her memory alive for me. But Aunt Brenda, that was another story. As my mother's older sister, she seemed to resent me for reasons I never fully understood. Maybe I reminded her too much of my mom. Or maybe she just found fault in everyone. At family gatherings, it was always something. "You're still carrying those extra pounds, I see," she'd comment, looking me up and down. Or, "When I was your age, I already owned a house, not just renting. Your cousin just got a big promotion, you know." Nothing I did was ever enough. So, when I announced my pregnancy to the family during a Sunday dinner at my father's house, I should have known what to expect. Richard held my hand under the table as I took a deep breath and shared our news. The reactions were mixed, at best. "Well, it's about time." "You're not getting any younger," Aunt Brenda remarked, sipping her wine without even looking at me. Then she added, with a little smirk, "Let's just hope you carry this one to term." The cruelty of it hung in the air. I felt Richard's hand tighten on mine. My father offered a brief, "Congratulations," before swiftly moving the conversation to my stepbrother's recent success at work. It was as if my miracle, my precious, terrifying hope, was just a minor interruption. Only my younger sister, Cassidy, showed genuine excitement. She jumped up and gave me a huge hug, peppering me with questions about due dates and names, her joy a small, bright light in the chilly room. "Don't let them get to you," Richard whispered as we drove home later that night. "We're going to be amazing parents, with or without their support." I tried to believe him, but their lukewarm response left me feeling hollow and alone. Throughout my first trimester, I tried to include them. I sent ultrasound photos to our family group chat. My father would respond with a thumbs-up emoji. Aunt Dolores would ask how I was feeling. Aunt Brenda would either ignore the messages or change the subject entirely. By my second trimester, I had stopped sharing updates with anyone except Cassidy, who always responded with enthusiasm. When we learned we were having a boy, Cassidy immediately sent a tiny baseball glove to our apartment with a note, "For my future MVP nephew." It made me cry. It was the first real acknowledgement from my family that this baby was real. As my belly grew, so did my excitement and, I'll admit, my anxiety. After everything we'd been through, it was hard to fully relax. But Richard and we threw ourselves into preparing. We attended birthing classes, we decorated the nursery in soft shades of blue and gray, and we made detailed plans for my maternity leave. Everything seemed to be progressing normally. At 20 weeks, our anatomy scan showed a healthy baby boy, with 10 fingers, 10 toes, and all his organs developing just as they should. "This is the one," our obstetrician assured us with a warm smile. "Everything looks perfect." I wanted to believe her more than anything in the world. Each week that passed felt like a small victory. Each prenatal appointment, a hurdle cleared. I talked to my baby constantly, my hands cradling my growing bump. "You are so loved already," I would tell him every night. "We can't wait to meet you, but take your time. Grow strong first." Little did I know how much those words would come back to haunt me. The first sign that something was wrong came during week 27. I woke up at 3 in the morning with a dull backache that wouldn't go away, no matter how I positioned myself. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just normal pregnancy pains. But by breakfast, I noticed a pinkish discharge that sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "I think we should call the doctor," I told Richard, trying to keep my voice steady, but my hands were shaking. We were at the hospital within the hour. The nurse hooked me up to monitors, and the rhythmic printout showed what I already feared: I was having contractions. The doctor's face grew serious as she examined me. "You're in preterm labor," she explained, her voice calm but firm. "We need to try to stop it." What followed was a blur of medication, steroid shots to help mature the baby's lungs, and constant, terrifying monitoring. For 3 days, I lay in that hospital bed, praying the contractions would stop. Richard rarely left my side, sleeping in that horribly uncomfortable hospital chair and holding my hand through the worst of it. On the 4th day, despite all the medical interventions, my water broke. There was no more waiting. "We can't delay any longer," the doctor informed us, her expression grim. "We need to deliver the baby now." I was rushed to the operating room for an emergency C-section. The fear was overwhelming, a cold, metallic taste in my mouth. At 28 weeks, I knew our baby's chances were better than they would have been a decade ago, but he was still coming into the world dangerously, terrifyingly early. Under the harsh, sterile lights of the operating room, I felt the strange tugging sensation as they worked. And then, the most terrifying moment of my life, the absence of a cry when they pulled him out. The silence in that room was deafening. It sent ice through my veins. "Is he okay?" I asked desperately, my voice a raw croak, unable to see anything beyond the surgical drape. "He's breathing," the doctor answered, but her tone lacked the reassurance I so desperately needed. "The NICU team is with him now." Richard kissed my forehead, his face a mask of fear and love, torn between staying with me and following our son. "Go with him," I urged, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't let him be alone." It was hours before I could see him. Still groggy from the anesthesia and in sharp pain from the surgery, I was wheeled into the neonatal intensive care unit, the NICU. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the sight of my tiny son. My Arthur. He was just 2 pounds, 3 ounces. He was in an incubator, a clear plastic box that looked more like a science experiment than a crib, connected to more tubes and wires than I could count. His skin was nearly translucent, his eyes were still fused shut, and his tiny chest rose and fell only with the help of a ventilator. I reached out a trembling hand, but I couldn't even touch him. There was a plastic barrier between us. "He's so small," I whispered, pressing my hand against the cold plastic. "But he's a fighter," a kind nurse assured me. "His vitals are stable for now." The neonatologist was kind but brutally honest. "The next 72 hours are critical," he explained. "Then we take it day by day. He will likely be here until close to his original due date, if all goes well." 12 weeks. 12 weeks in this terrifying place. 12 weeks of uncertainty before we could take our son home. I tried to absorb this information through the fog of physical pain and emotional shock, but it felt impossible. That night, I was alone in my recovery room while Richard went home to shower and grab some essentials for what we knew would be a long hospital stay. I took out my phone. My fingers were trembling so hard I could barely type. I pulled up the family group chat. I wrote, "Arthur Richard was born today at 28 weeks. He weighs 2 pounds 3 ounces. We're in the NICU and would appreciate your prayers and support during this difficult time." I attached the only photo I had been able to take so far, his tiny, perfect hand wrapped around my index finger. Then I waited. I stared at the screen, desperate for messages of support, offers of help, anything to make me feel less alone in this terrifying new reality. The 3 little dots appeared next to my Aunt Brenda's name. My heart leaped with a foolish flicker of hope. Maybe she would step up. Maybe this was the moment she would finally be the aunt I needed. The message came through. It wasn't words. It was 5 photos. 5 bright, sunny photos from her Hawaiian vacation. There she was, smiling on a beach, holding a cocktail with a little umbrella in it. The caption read, "Aloha from Maui." The weather is perfect. I stared at my phone in utter disbelief. Surely, she had seen my message. Surely, she understood the gravity of what we were going through. My son was fighting for his life, and she sent vacation photos. I waited for someone else to respond. For my father, for Aunt Dolores, for any of my cousins to acknowledge what had happened. Nothing. The screen remained blank. The silence was a crushing weight. Then, my phone rang. It was Cassidy. Audrey, I'm so sorry. I just saw the message. Is there anything I can do? Do you need me to come? I broke down then, sobbing into the phone, great, heaving gasps of grief and fear and betrayal. He's so tiny, Cass. I'm so scared. I'll try to get a flight out this weekend, she promised. Have Mom and Dad been by yet? I hesitated, the shame burning in my throat. No one has responded, I whispered. Except Aunt Brenda, with vacation photos. The silence on her end spoke volumes. That's messed up, she finally said. That's really messed up. I'll call Dad. I'll let him know how serious this is. But even after Cassidy's intervention, the responses were tepid at best. My father texted, sorry to hear about the complications. Let us know if you need anything. No visit. No call. Just a text. It was as if they couldn't grasp the magnitude of what was happening. Or worse, they just didn't care enough to try. The days turned into a week, and then two. No one from my family came to visit. No flowers, no care packages, not even a proper phone call. Just occasional, sterile text messages asking for updates. I would respond with Arthur's latest weight or a small milestone, like opening his eyes for the first time or coming off the ventilator onto a less invasive machine. Aunt Brenda replied to one of my updates, saying, my sister's neighbor's grandson was a preemie and now he plays football. As if that generic, third-hand reassurance was all the support a niece recovering from major surgery with a critically ill child needed. I stopped expecting anything from them. I poured all my energy into being there for Arthur, learning the strange, new world of the NICU. My life developed its own rhythm. I would arrive at 8 o'clock in the morning, just in time for Arthur's care time. The nurses would check his vitals, change his diaper, and help me with kangaroo care. That's where they place the baby directly on your chest, skin to skin. It was one of the few ways I could truly mother my son, and I cherished every second of it, feeling his tiny heartbeat against mine. The NICU was a foreign land with its own language. I learned to interpret the numbers on Arthur's monitors, to know which beeps and alarms were routine and which ones meant trouble. I could recite his daily stats like a sports announcer: weight, oxygen saturation, heart rate, feeding volume. I spent hours just sitting by his incubator, reading children's books aloud or just talking to him in a soft voice. I told him about the home waiting for him, about his dad who loved him so much, about our cat Luna who would be his first furry friend. And all the while, I was watching other families. I saw grandparents come and go, bringing food and comfort. I saw aunts and uncles sitting in the waiting room, ready to offer a hug or a shoulder to cry on. And I sat there, completely alone. The loneliness was a physical presence. Richard was amazing, but he had to go back to work after 2 weeks to keep our health insurance. The financial reality of our situation was terrifying. Every day in the NICU added thousands of dollars to our medical debt. He would come to the hospital straight from the office and stay late into the evening, but during the long days, it was just me. During those long hours, I would scroll through social media on my phone, a habit I couldn't seem to break. And I would see them. My family. There was a photo of my father and Patricia at a concert. A post from Aunt Brenda about a big family dinner I hadn't been invited to. My cousins, all gathered for a weekend at someone's lake house. Life was just continuing for them. As if nothing had changed. While my world had completely shattered and reformed around this tiny plastic box in the NICU, their world just kept spinning. Each photo, each casual update about their normal lives, felt like a deliberate, painful reminder of my exclusion. It was a confirmation of how little they cared about Arthur's fight, or my struggle. In the absence of the family I was born into, I started to find a new one. It was a family forged in the shared trauma and quiet desperation of the NICU. It started in the pumping room. Every 3 hours, I would retreat to this small, sterile space with 3 curtained-off stations. It was there, hooked up to a machine, that I met other women living the same nightmare. There was Sarah, whose twins had been born at 26 weeks. Jessica, whose daughter had a congenital heart defect. And Monica, whose son had Down syndrome and needed surgery. Different circumstances had brought us all to the same room, our bodies producing milk for babies we could barely hold. One afternoon, as the mechanical hum of the pumps filled the room, Jessica confided, "My mother-in-law said I should just formula feed since he can't breastfeed yet anyway. She doesn't understand why I'm putting myself through this." My sister asked if I was still stuck at the hospital all day, Monica added, rolling her eyes. "As if I'm here by choice." I listened, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of understanding. These women got it. They understood the profound, gut-wrenching grief of leaving the hospital every night without your baby. They knew the physical pain of recovering from childbirth while spending 12 hours a day in an uncomfortable plastic chair. They understood the emotional whiplash of celebrating the tiniest victories, gaining a few grams, breathing for an hour without support, while living in constant fear of the next setback. One of them mentioned her husband's ex-wife was causing trouble, trying to get a lawyer involved to change their custody agreement because he was spending so much time at the hospital. Life didn't stop, even when you were living in a nightmare. We formed a text group. We'd check in on each other's babies, share articles about preemie development, and offer support when the journey got too overwhelming. Thinking of you today, hope the weigh-in goes well, or just saw your post, sending so much love. You're the strongest mom I know. They became my NICU family, bound by an experience I would never have chosen, but couldn't have navigated alone. The nurses became my guides and my confidants. There was Maria, with 20 years of experience, who taught me how to touch Arthur without overwhelming his sensitive nervous system. Jen, who showed me how to carefully change a diaper around a dozen wires and tubes. Thomas, the night nurse with gentle hands, who always had a detailed update ready when I'd call at 2 a.m, unable to sleep for worrying. "You're doing great, Mama," they would tell me. It was a reassurance I clung to when everything else felt like it was spiraling out of control. They were my lifeline. On the 28th day of Arthur's life, I had settled into the familiar, strange routine. Morning rounds with the doctors had gone well. Arthur was up to 3 pounds exactly, a weight that felt miraculous considering where we had started. He was even starting to take a little bit of his feeding by mouth, a promising sign that the feeding tube might soon be a thing of the past. He might be ready for his first proper bath today, Maria, my favorite nurse, suggested during the morning care time. "Would you like to try?" It was a milestone I had been desperately looking forward to. A chance to care for my baby in a way that felt normal. Definitely, I agreed, my heart swelling with a rare, uncomplicated joy. After the afternoon care time, with a few hours to spare, I decided to take a proper lunch break. The hospital cafeteria wasn't exactly fine dining, but it offered a change of scenery and a chance to call Richard with the good news about the bath. I found a quiet corner table and unwrapped my bland turkey sandwich. As I pulled out my phone to call Richard, I noticed something strange. The screen was filled with notifications. 62 missed calls. 28 text messages. 9 voicemails. My heart began to race. Most of them were from my sister, Cassidy, with timestamps indicating she had been trying to reach me for hours. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine as I opened her most recent text. It was in all caps. "Audrey, answer your phone. This is bad." With trembling fingers, I called her back. She answered on the first ring. "Where have you been?" Her voice was tight with tension. "I've been trying to reach you all morning." "I'm in the NICU, Cass. Where else would I be?" My phone was on silent. The fear in her voice made my stomach clench. "What's going on? What's happened?" There was a heavy pause on the other end of the line before she spoke again, her voice cracking. "It's Aunt Dolores. She was in a car accident early this morning." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Aunt Dolores, the one relative besides Cassidy who had shown me any real kindness over the years. What happened? I managed to ask, my own voice a hoarse whisper. Drunk driver ran a red light. Hit her driver's side. She has internal bleeding and a head injury. They've taken her into surgery. It's pretty serious, Audrey. They don't know if she's going to make it. Jake's voice cracked slightly. Everyone is at Memorial Hospital now. Dad asked. He asked why you're not here yet. A bitter, incredulous laugh escaped my throat before I could stop it. He asked why I'm not there? Are you serious? I could feel the anger, simmering for 4 weeks, finally start to boil over. What do you mean, Cass? I've been sitting with my premature son in the NICU for a month, and not one single person from our family has bothered to visit. Not Dad, not Patricia, not Aunt Brenda, not any of the cousins. No one except you has even called to check on us. The silence on the other end of the line told me Cassidy was processing this. That can't be right, she finally said, her voice laced with confusion. They said they were visiting regularly. Audrey. Aunt Brenda told everyone at Sunday dinner last week that she had been bringing you meals and sitting with Arthur so you could rest. It was like a physical punch to the gut. The air left my lungs. What? She said what? She's been telling everyone that she visits you 3 times a week. Cassidy's voice was shifting from confused to angry. She said she brings home-cooked meals to the hospital, that she sits with Arthur while you nap or shower. She even showed Dad pictures of Arthur that she claimed to have taken herself. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the sheer audacity of it. The only pictures I've ever sent are to the family chat. The ones I took. She must have saved them and pretended they were hers. My voice broke as the full weight of the betrayal hit me. What about the others? Dad? Aunt Dolores, before the accident? No one, Cass. No one has been here. I could hear Cassidy's breathing change, could practically feel her anger crackling through the phone. I knew something was off, she said, her voice low and furious. I kept asking why they weren't talking about Arthur more, and Brenda would always say that you wanted privacy, that you were tired of everyone asking for updates. That's the opposite of the truth. I've been sending updates to the family chat every few days, and most of the time, no one even responds. I haven't been seeing those messages, Cassidy said, a horrifying realization dawning in her voice. Oh my God, Audrey. I wonder if she created a separate group without me. There was the sound of movement as if she was pacing. This is unbelievable. She told Dad that you specifically asked him not to come because seeing him would remind you too much of Mom and you couldn't handle that emotional stress on top of everything else. That was it. That was the final, cruelest twist of the knife. That is absolute nonsense, I said, my voice rising enough that a woman at a nearby table gave me a concerned look. I lowered my tone, but it was filled with a cold fury. I would have given anything to have family support these past weeks. I wiped away tears, not of sadness, but of pure rage. Not only had my family abandoned me, but my aunt had actively, maliciously orchestrated it. She had painted me as fragile and demanding privacy while she played the role of the caring, supportive matriarch. Why? What possible reason could she have for such cruelty? And how had everyone else, my own father, accepted her lies without question, without ever bothering to call me directly to verify her claims? I told Cassidy I couldn't leave Arthur to come to Memorial. He was still too fragile. I needed to be there. I understand, she said, her voice hard with resolve. I'll go, but Audrey, this is not over. They can't get away with treating you and Arthur like this. And right at that moment, as my sister said those words, I knew she was right. I couldn't be silent anymore. This betrayal was too big, this wound was too deep. I had to confront them. If you're still listening, thank you. If you're here with me in this moment, please help me by liking this video and commenting with the number 1 down below. It lets me know you're here, that you're walking this journey with me. Your support is a bigger encouragement than you could ever know. Please, comment with the number 1 and listen to what happened next. 2 days later, my sister Cassidy arrived at the NICU. Her face was a mixture of exhaustion and fierce determination. She had been splitting her time between the 2 hospitals, checking on Aunt Dolores, who remained in critical condition but had survived her surgery, and now, coming to meet her nephew for the first time. The moment she saw Arthur in his open crib, her tough exterior just melted. "Oh my God," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "He's so tiny." 3 pounds, 2 ounces as of this morning, I said, a wave of pride washing over me. "He's perfect, Audrey. Absolutely perfect." After she spent an hour holding him, just sitting motionless with this tiny baby sleeping on her chest, we went to the NICU family room to talk privately. I needed to know everything. "It's worse than we thought," she said, running a hand through her hair. "Brenda has been systematically isolating you for months. She told everyone you were overwhelmed and wanted space. She even told Aunt Dolores's daughter, Lisa, not to visit you because the NICU had strict visitor limitations and your spots were all taken by Dad and Brenda." Each new lie felt like another stab to the heart. "I want to confront her," I said, a new resolve hardening within me. "I want everyone to hear what she has done." Cassidy nodded. "I thought you might say that. I've set up a video call for this evening. Everyone will be in Aunt Dolores's hospital room. They all want to see Arthur and hear directly from you." That evening, with Arthur sleeping peacefully in his crib beside me, Cassidy called. On my screen appeared the faces of my family, gathered around a laptop. My father, looking older than I remembered. Patricia, her hand on his shoulder. My cousins. And there, at the edge of the frame, Aunt Brenda, her expression carefully neutral. "Audrey," my father began, his voice thick with emotion. "Cassidy tells us we have been misled." Before I responded, I angled my phone to show them Arthur. "This is your grandson, Dad. Your nephew. Your great-nephew, Aunt Brenda. He is 4 weeks old today, and none of you have met him." There was a collective gasp as they saw him for the first time, so small in his crib with the monitors attached to his tiny body. "Brenda told us the NICU was restricting visitors," my father said, his eyes not leaving the image of Arthur. "She said you had asked her to go in my place because I remind you too much of your mother." I switched the camera back to my face, my expression hard. "That is a lie. The NICU allows 4 designated visitors per baby. Richard and I are 2. Cassidy is now the 3rd. We have been saving the 4th spot, hoping someone from our family would want it." I looked directly at the camera, making eye contact with each of them. "I have been alone," I said, no longer able to keep the hurt from my voice. "I have been sitting in this hospital for 12 hours a day, watching my son fight for his life with no family support except for Cassidy's phone calls. I have been pumping breast milk around the clock, recovering from a C-section, dealing with medical decisions and insurance paperwork, all while terrified that my baby might not survive. And not one of you called me directly to check in." The silence that followed was heavy with shame. Every face on the screen, except for Brenda's, showed shock and remorse. "Why?" I finally asked, looking directly at Brenda. "Why would you lie to everyone? Why would you isolate me when I needed my family the most?" Brenda's face remained impassive. "I was protecting the family from your drama," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "You have always been attention-seeking, just like your mother. Always the victim, always needing everyone to drop everything for your latest crisis." The cruelty of her words left me momentarily speechless. "How dare you?" Cassidy's voice came through, hard with anger. "Audrey's son is in the NICU. This is not drama." "I visited once," Brenda continued, ignoring Cassidy. "The first week. You were sleeping, so I didn't wake you. I saw enough to know the nurses had everything under control. There was no need for the entire family to upend their lives. You never visited, I said, finding my voice again. Not once. If you had, the nurses would have a record of it. Are you calling me a liar? Brenda's voice rose defensively. Yes, I said simply. I am. You lied to everyone. You lied about me wanting privacy. And you stole the photos I sent to pretend you had taken them yourself. The faces on my screen turned to Brenda, who was now visibly flustered. What followed was painful, but necessary. One by one, family members shared what Brenda had told them. The web of lies was so extensive that it took nearly an hour to unravel it all. By the end, my father's face was grim. That was not your decision to make, Brenda, he said, his voice sharper than I had heard it in years. You took that choice away from all of us. Before I ended the call, I made one final statement. I am focused on Arthur right now. Moving forward, I will choose carefully who is part of our family circle. Blood relation alone is not enough. And with that, I hung up, emotionally drained, but strangely lighter. The morning after the video call, I arrived at the NICU to find my father and Patricia already there. Seeing my father standing outside Arthur's room, his face etched with awe and regret as he peered through the window at his tiny grandson, unlocked something in my chest. He turned as I approached, and for the first time since my mother's funeral, I saw him cry openly. Audrey, I am so sorry, he sobbed. I should have known better. I should have called you directly. I wanted to hold on to my anger. I wanted to make him understand the depth of his absence. But seeing his genuine remorse weakened my resolve. You should have, I agreed softly. But you're here now. Patricia stepped forward, her usual reserved demeanor replaced with earnest concern. We brought some things for you and Arthur, she said, indicating a large bag. Inside were soft preemie clothes, a journal for NICU parents, a gift card for the hospital cafe, and comfortable slippers for me. They had already been there for an hour, learning the hand-washing protocols and getting their visitor badges. Their effort was a starting point. It was an acknowledgement of their neglect. That promise my dad made, I'm sorry I'm late to the party, but I promise I'll be here from now on, marked the beginning of a new chapter. He visited every other day, bringing food or just sitting with Arthur so I could take a real break. But the most surprising development came from Aunt Dolores. When she finally awakened and recovered enough from her accident, she asked to video call me. I should have known something was wrong, she said, her voice weak. Brenda has always been jealous of your mother, and by extension, you. I let her take control because it seemed easier, but I never imagined she would go this far. As for Brenda herself, she made one attempt to visit the NICU, showing up unannounced with a teddy bear. But I had already instructed the nurses not to add her to our approved visitor list. The nurse at the front desk called me. I'm his great-aunt, Brenda protested loudly in the background. I have every right to see him. I walked to the front desk, my heart pounding but my voice steady. No, you do not, I told her firmly. You forfeited that right when you lied to our entire family and left me to face this alone. The only people who have a right to see Arthur are those who have proven they can be trusted to support us. She left in tears, later sending a lengthy, rambling email positioning herself as the victim. I deleted it without responding. Some relationships were not worth salvaging. I was finally learning that. The next few weeks were a marathon of small victories and terrifying setbacks. There was the week Arthur struggled with his heart rate dropping unexpectedly. The day he had to go back on oxygen. But through it all, my new support system rallied around us. My father and Patricia were constant. Cassidy was my rock. My NICU mom friends were a daily source of comfort. After 8 long weeks and 3 grueling days, the doctors told us Arthur was finally cleared to come home. At 5 pounds, 2 ounces, he was still so tiny, but he had met all the criteria for discharge. The morning we prepared to leave the hospital was filled with a dizzying mix of joy and sheer terror. You are ready for this, Maria assured me as she helped us gather Arthur's things. You have been training for 8 weeks. You know this baby better than anyone. She was right. We had learned infant CPR, how to recognize signs of distress, and how to administer all his medications. Still, leaving the safety net of the NICU was daunting. What if something happens? I asked Richard the night before, my anxiety spiraling. What if we miss something the monitors would have caught? Then we'll handle it, he said firmly, putting his arms around me. We have the pediatrician on speed dial. We have our follow-up appointments. And we have each other. We can do this, Audrey. His confidence bolstered mine. This was a good time to bring up a happy thought. When things settle down, he said, the first thing we're doing is opening a college fund for him. It was a statement of faith in our son's future, a future that had felt so uncertain just weeks ago. The next day, walking out of those hospital doors with Arthur secured in his car seat felt surreal. The outside world seemed too loud, too bright, too full of germs for our fragile baby. Richard drove home at exactly 5 miles below the speed limit while I sat in the back next to Arthur, watching his every tiny breath. When we arrived home, we were greeted by a small welcome committee. Cassidy, my father, Patricia, and my cousin Lisa had gathered with balloons and a banner that read, "Welcome home, Arthur." Their excitement was tempered with a gentle understanding. They kept their voices low and made sure everyone used hand sanitizer before we even entered the apartment. After a brief celebration, they left us to adjust to our new reality as a family of 3, at home, for the very first time. The quiet that descended after they left was both peaceful and intimidating. What do we do now? I asked Richard, half joking, as we stood looking down at our son sleeping in his bassinet. Now we live, he said simply, putting his arm around me. One day at a time. Those first few weeks at home established a new rhythm. Life revolved around 3-hour feeding schedules, day and night. We were exhausted, but we were so grateful. Each ounce he gained felt like a monumental victory. About 2 months after Arthur came home, we received an invitation to Aunt Dolores's welcome home party. She was finally home after a long stay in the hospital and a rehabilitation facility. I knew Aunt Brenda would be there. We don't have to go, Richard said immediately. But I felt it was important. I needed to redefine my place within the family, on my own terms. The gathering was smaller than usual. When we arrived, I could feel Brenda watching me from across the room. I spent some time with Aunt Dolores, showing her recent photos of Arthur, who is now filling out and starting to look like a typical newborn. Later, Brenda approached me in the kitchen. "Your baby looks well," she said stiffly. "I'm glad things worked out." The casual dismissal of the trauma we had endured ignited a calm, cold anger within me. "His name is Arthur," I said evenly. "And yes, he is doing well now, despite the fact that he spent the first 2 months of his life in the hospital without the support of his extended family because of your lies." "I think there have been misunderstandings on both sides," she began. "No," I interrupted, keeping my voice low but firm. "There has been deliberate deception on your side, and that is not something I can simply forget. I don't expect an apology, because I don't believe you think you did anything wrong. But I want to be very clear, you will not have a relationship with my son unless you can acknowledge the harm you caused and make genuine amends." Her face flushed with anger. "You can't keep me from my great-nephew. I am family." "Being family is not just about blood, Brenda," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "It is about trust, support, and genuine care. You have shown none of those things. So yes, I can and I will decide who has a place in Arthur's life. And right now, that does not include you." I left her standing there and rejoined my husband, a profound sense of peace settling over me. Setting that boundary was necessary, not just for Arthur, but for my own healing. Arthur's first birthday was a celebration of more than just his life. It was a recognition of the journey we had all taken. Looking around at the small group gathered in our home, I saw my chosen family. The NICU nurses who had become dear friends. The other preemie parents who had walked the journey alongside us. My sister Cassidy, who had stood by me when others had not. My father, who had earned his way back into our lives. And Richard, my partner through it all, holding our thriving, happy 1-year-old son. This was family. Not the one I had been born into, but the one we had built through crisis and love, through boundaries and forgiveness. The NICU experience had nearly broken me. But in rebuilding myself, I had created something stronger than before. I learned that sometimes, the most painful experiences lead to the most profound growth. And I learned that family isn't about who you share blood with. It's about who shows up when it matters most. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It means the world to me that you stayed until the end. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to redefine what family means to you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you would, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really does help. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. And so, this story serves as a profound reminder that family is not defined solely by blood, but by love, support, and the courage to show up when it matters most. Audrey's journey through heartbreak, resilience, and the fight for her son's life teaches us that true strength is often born from the darkest of times. It is in those moments of vulnerability that we discover who truly stands by our side, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care and compassion. Life has a way of testing our limits, pushing us to confront the pain, betrayal, and loneliness we fear most. Yet, it is through these trials that we grow. Audrey's story inspires us to set boundaries, to forgive where it is deserved, and to choose the relationships that nurture us. It challenges us to redefine the meaning of family, urging us to build connections rooted in trust and empathy, rather than tradition alone. What does family mean to you? How do you define the people who matter most in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, or simply type good if this story resonated with your heart. Together, let us celebrate resilience and the beautiful power of love.